Hi there, everybody. Welcome to this edition of the AFSA Extra Credit Podcast. I am delighted to have you with us. Again, as always, Dan Butcher, your lovely host. I don't know if I'm lovely. Tab will tell me. Tab Edmondson is the Senior Director, Lender Solutions with Epic, a new business partner of AFSA's. We're very delighted to have him join us. How you doing, Tab?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
We got on the phone here just a minute ago on the recording platform here, and immediately knew we were going to have a good conversation because Tab equaled my energy and then duplicated it. So I think we're in a good spot to talk about all sorts of things regarding modernizing loan payoffs and lien release processes, which is super exciting. Am I right?
Very much so.
Cool. Well, let's start with this, Tab. Like I said, Epic, brand new business partner with us, supported us there at the Vehicle Finance Conference, which was really great. And so why don't you just tell us a little bit about you, about your career, and a little bit about Epic so we can get to know you.
Sure, absolutely. So I've actually been in the, automotive industry for 30 plus years. And I worked for Insurance Auto Auctions, AKA IAA, for almost 30 years and enjoyed it. Day one, and saw the company grow and was very fortunate to be a part of it. And then retired about 2.5 years ago. But interesting enough, during that time, I actually ran a company called DDI Technology. IA bought it and became very familiar with the title processing, we'll call it fun experience that most dealerships and lenders go through. And there's so many ways that it can be benefit and it can be improved. And during that time, I actually met a gentleman by the name of Brandon Hall. And Brandon had been an entrepreneur, founder for many years and was developing a product and that first started in the insurance industry with helping to electronically pay off total losses. And he very quickly realized that really he needed to be in the dealer network. And so he started at that point transforming and ended up building Epic. And so this has actually been for Brandon about a 10-year process. And we're very fortunate that when we came really to big market last year, we have been met with very, very welcoming arms from lenders as well as dealers. And we're fortunate we have been in the process of rolling out now and get new opportunities every single day.
That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. I am also happy to hear that someone is dealing with loan payoffs and things at the dealership, because anytime I look into the F&I office for the folks when I buy a car, I just am constantly boggled with my brain with the amount of stuff that they have to work through to get this kind of thing done. If you're a lender, let's say, and these loan payoffs obviously getting handled at the dealership, what do you find is most surprising to the lender who's looking at the process?
I think what lenders oftentimes don't realize basically comes from the fact that a dealership, let's just say it's an average size dealership that might be doing, 600 cars a month, right? Well, 70-80% of those are going to have a payoff. What most lenders don't realize is there could be dozens of different lenders that have to be used and worked with in order to make that happen. And the dealership at the same time is also trying to place that new loan. So they're working both sides of that operation. And what happens is every lender has a different process to follow. And this is something that the dealerships deal with, but oftentimes the lenders just aren't aware of. And so hence they don't really understand the challenges that all of the departments. And it's interesting when you say F&I, because you're right, that's one department that's affected by it. But really it starts with that salesperson. It starts with F&I. It goes to the controller and it goes to the title department. So every one of those has to touch this unique process that's going on with all these different lenders.
That's a really good point. There is, I'm imagining, having never been in the dealership business, the car dealership business, but I can always imagine that the salesperson who's going about their day and somebody comes in with a trade-in and they're like, it's awesome, it's going to be great. And then all of a sudden the person's like, well, I know I owe money on it, but I'm not sure to who. It might be this company, it might be this bank, or maybe it's the credit union down the street. I don't know. And the sales guy's probably like, oh man. So is that like a lot of, it ends up being a lot of manual processes, right? Just a lot of stuff you got to slog through.
You are exactly right. And you're right. You hope that customer that you're working with has that knowledge, but to be honest, most of the time they don't. They just don't know. And so now the dealership has to figure out how to acquire that information. Because you know what? Let's face it, the dealership wants to sell a car, F&I wants to place that loan, and more importantly, that consumer wants a new car.
Right.
And so now they have to figure out how to make all of this happen. And you're right, it's really interesting. I guess if you stop and think about it, how many people actually even know, one, where's my loan placed, and how much do I owe on it? I can tell you very, very few people. Right. The ones that do know might be a leased vehicle or something of that nature, and that's a little bit different situation, or if they're a repeat customer going back to a dealership. But you'd be surprised. It still can create a challenge. And what happens is, with little information, it just complicates the process, and it takes additional time. It takes time from the sales department. It takes time from the consumer. It takes time F&I, and everybody else that's involved. So what should, to your point, Dan, should be very easy to process goes from being an hour to could be days at a time just to complete this whole process. So dealerships are always looking for a way to expedite that process to make their teams much more efficient and, to be honest, to save everybody a lot of time. And ultimately, the consumer is the one who benefits because they've gone through a much easier process versus having to wait here and wait there and do all that stuff. Let's face it, everybody's time is very valuable. And you want to make sure that you use as little time as possible with everybody that's involved.
Right. So let's start over. Let's start over the entire process. In the ideal world, when this process runs smoothly, I'm working with the salesperson, I've decided on my vehicle, I'm all set to go, I bring in my trade-in. Ideal world, how does this go? How does it work?
So basically, if you stop and think about this, I want to go to one place to do everything. So I want to go to one place, website, whatever you want to call it, okay? I want to go there, I want to type in a VIN, and I want it to tell me who the lien holder is. Then I want to find out how much is owed on it. Okay, so now I'm going to one location, and that's all done. I get a validation of how much is owed on it. I can even maybe find out if a last payment has been made. And now that information has already been gathered. So next step is F&I's got accurate information. They can then use that. They can use that to process the new loan. And they say, hey, your loan's with Bank X or Credit Union X now. Let's just go back with them. So now you know that. Well, next thing you know, the sales department's already sped through this, and then it goes into the controller to have the loan paid off. They've got all the information right there. They can use the same system to actually pay it off. And next thing you know, that payoff goes off overnight. It's received that night or the next morning, and next thing you know, the title's being sent out. So you've taken everything that could have involved hours, and you can literally just do it all using one system, one place, in order to make this happen and make it very efficient for everybody who's involved.
Awesome. That's great. And you kind of touched on it already, but if you could accentuate or highlight, obviously this benefits all parties concerned, but how would you say it specifically benefits the lender?
So this is the interesting thing about it, right? So many different lenders, whether they're captives, credit unions, or big banks, they all have a portal to go in and try to acquire this information, right? Or if they don't have it, somebody's got to make a phone call. So now if you picture this lender is now having to pick up the phone, they're having to go in, they're having to calculate, they're having to give it back, they're having to process paperwork. So what's happening is if you've got 10 deals basically that are being processed and 10 different lenders, all of that's going to take up time. And so those lenders now are having to expedite on their time basically to put it all out there, and they're having to manually calculate what that payoff would be. Because let's face it, a salesperson may not always want to log in, or maybe they don't have access to log in, or the F&I doesn't have access to log in. So now you have phone calls that are having to be made. And so all of those lenders are having to pick up the phone and understand that. Well, what becomes even more interesting is in a captive world. So if you happen to be going into a dealership that has a captive auto finance, well, that's all they usually use. Well, that becomes complicated now too, because they're not used to having to go to other lenders. When they can go to one source and make that happen, that means the lender is making better use of their time in order to hopefully keep that customer happy, because that lender ultimately is all about client retention as well. They want to know that that consumer who's trading in their new car is going to buy a car now and place a loan with them again. If they've been a good client, that's very important. And same thing goes for a dealership. That dealership wants to retain ownership of that customer and hope that they come back. So by creating this nice relationship between the dealer and the lenders, you've created that. You've made it very, very positive for the consumer. And basically they're sit there, it's a very short period of time. They don't have to waste a lot of time, and they can get on the road in their new car. And this is really important. And the lenders, this is something that most people don't realize, is the fact that the lenders are all about customer retention as well too. I've dealt with lenders for years, and they want to keep them all coming back because they said, this was a good customer. That person paid all of their payments on time. They were good. We're going to make sure we keep them happy all through the future.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's always an interesting business to me because it's a company that's not inherently right out front, right? It's a company that's trying to maintain business without brand loyalty, without actually fighting for it. You know, you don't often think of go walk out on the street right now. You're not going to be able to, you're going to have a hard time having somebody recall who they're financing with necessarily because it's just not something they think about it.
You don't, Dan, and that's exactly right. It's one of those behind the scenes things that goes on. So it's kind of an undervalued relationship. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's great because you've just built a reputation up with that lender. And maybe if you want to go out and get a credit card, something of that nature, you've got this relationship that's been built up. So that becomes really, really important to make sure that that lender earns that respect from that consumer, and the consumer then respects them, and it just builds up. And this is something that I think we're trying to bring into the limelight, which is the importance of the relationship with the lender, with the consumer, and the lender and the dealer, and make it as easy as possible for those lenders. I mean, I can tell you, Epic today has over 9,000 lenders on our portal that can be handled directly. 9,000. It's a huge number, and we're one of the only ones out there that has that. And so it's very, very beneficial and can be very, very efficient for everybody to use, and basically just keep your life easy. I mean, it's really, really nice. The faster you can process it, the more volume that dealership can process, the more volume that lender can process. And really, as the time becomes more and more efficient, it's very beneficial for the dealer too, because they're burning up less capital. And so that's important for everybody. I think what we've tried to do is approach it 3 different ways. And that's keeping all 3 of those in a nice relationship and making everybody beneficial, the lender, the dealer, as well as the consumer.
That's awesome. It's kind of starting to wrap up a bit. Obviously, we're talking about Epic, and you know, we wouldn't be here if you didn't have solves to all these problems, right? So there's that. But I do want to leverage your expertise in the industry for a half a second here and ask 2 questions.
Sure.
One, separate, if you can, take off your Epic hat for a second and just broadly think about this problem. What's something that lenders should consider about this process that shows up in the dealership that they can make better right now, product agnostic?
I think what lenders can do is make it as easy as possible for dealers to work with them. Find the easiest path, the easiest methodology, and making sure, and to be very frank, some lenders don't even like to get ACHs. They prefer checks. I would say every lender out there, please open up, receive ACHs. We chuckle every single day when that happens because it's much easier for everybody if they'll just expedite this process, because then when the dealer wants to release the title, it's much easier because it's already in their account, it's already handled. So I would just say, lenders, open your minds to making this as easy as possible for dealerships to work with you and just to open up and understand how you can make that happen.
Awesome. And then again, with your expertise in this industry, I'm asking this with everybody I speak to, and we're talking about it at our Independence Conference, which by the time this publishes will probably have just occurred. So artificial intelligence, AI, there's no way around it. I'm sorry. How do you view AI as it relates to these issues in terms of lien release and things like that? Is there a role? Is there not? Is it too soon? That kind of stuff.
You know, it's interesting because I will tell you, Epic is an active user of AI technology. And many of the conversations that occur, the technologies that are being built and that sort of thing. I would tell you what I think would be fascinating to see is how AI can actually be used with the title processing. Because right now we have 50 different DMVs across the country, and everybody does business just a little bit different. If somehow we could figure out how to allow, we'll say, those DMVs to use AI to help process their title, to understand the title, make it easier for the lenders and the dealers to make that happen, because I do think, from my perspective, that DMVs are very challenged in that respect, but I do think you'll find that the lenders and the dealers are using it more and more. So if we can, again, create that, I think it'd be very beneficial. It's interesting when you see the capacity or the capabilities of AI and how it's already related to this industry. It really is amazing how much faster you can move forward. Because if you just go back, horrible to say, but if you go back to when COVID hit, right? Look at how technology was used back in 2020 and how advanced we became then. And now all of a sudden, look at what AI has done in the last 12 months. And right. It's just not going to stop. So it's one of those situations where you just need to jump on, figure out the best way to use it, and make it the most valuable tool you have out there, but never ever lose that one-on-one customer interface, because I do believe that's still very important. People like to deal with each other.
Awesome. Well, that's a perfect way to end. Calling back to COVID, and I still can't find the mute button or the unmute button with my video call, so it's not. Hopefully AI will make that easier too. So that's awesome. Tab Edmondson, Senior Director of Lender Solutions with Epic. Thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast.
Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate it.